Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're taking a look at one of my favorite topics ever. We're going to look at some early history of the United States, meaning how we came to be a country and then how our country expanded to become the size that it is today with 50 states. Because originally we only had 13 states and we've grown all the way to 50 states. So let's take a look at where we started. Originally, the North American continent was inhabited by Native Americans. And it wasn't until the 1500s, and then especially the early 1600s, that Europeans started arriving in the Americas. And they started establishing colonies in the Americas that says, these lands in North America belong to my countries. So in the 1600s, there were 3 European countries colonizing areas of North America. And those were Spain, France, and England. Now, the country England is going to sort of evolve over the years. So if you hear me say England or Great Britain, or even today United Kingdom, we're referencing the same areas. But in this time period, you're going to hear me say England and probably end up saying Great Britain as well. So if we take a look at a map, this is North America in the 1600s. And it shows you what countries claimed what parts of North America. So if we look here, the northern part of this map is what we call today Canada. The southern part, is what would be the current United States, and then down here is Mexico and Central America. So on first impression, looking at this map of North America, the first thing I notice is which country has the biggest territory. And to me, it definitely looks like Spain, and it even goes down into South America. Spain has the biggest colony of any other European country in North America. And then if I look, I go, oh, France. France has a big territory as well. Great Britain colonized very northern Canada, not a lot up there. But this eastern part of the United States is where England, or Great Britain, colonized. So they had a smaller colony in what we have as the United States today than any of the other European countries. Now, there's going to end up being conflict because these European countries are wanting the natural resources and other goods to take back to Europe and trade and make money from. And so anytime there's money to be made, you're going to end up with conflict. So the biggest one here is that both France and England were trying to claim the same area of land. And that area of land is the Ohio River Valley. So if you go to western part of Pennsylvania and just southwest of it, that's called the Ohio River Valley. And that's the area that both France and England were wanting to claim. Why? Because there's a natural resource there, or a resource there that they wanted to take back and sell in Europe. And that was actually beaver fur. Beaver fur was a high commodity back in Europe during this time period. And there's an abundance of beaver along the Ohio River. If you go out to Pittsburgh today, there's a beaver county. There's even a town called Beaver Falls. There's even Big Beaver. So these places are named in reference to that resource in that area. So that was just one of the major resources that both France and England wanted at the time. But it actually is going to lead to conflict and war between those two countries. And that war is called the French and Indian War. People would think of that name and say, oh, it was a war between France and the Native Americans. But no, it was actually because most of the Native Americans sided with France in that war because they had had enough of what England was doing by pushing them off their land. So the French and Indian War was between Great Britain and France. And Great Britain would end up winning that war. How do I know Great Britain ended up winning that war? It's because currently today I'm standing here teaching you in English. If France would have ended up winning this war, they would have probably taken over Great Britain's colony in the Americas. And if that would have happened, it's quite possible that I would be standing up here today speaking in French to my students. So let's take a look at the French and Indian War here with a map. So at the beginning of the war, I said that, and this is mainly the United States part, Great Britain had the smaller of the territories, but they controlled the whole eastern coast, and that's good for shipping. Now, France had this whole area, and there's the Ohio River Valley that both of them were wanting to claim. And that's important because inside of the continent, the river system was important to shipping as well, especially to get access to the Gulf of Mexico and Atlantic Ocean to then ship goods overseas. Now, I said that Great Britain won the war. So Great Britain actually took control of a lot of France's territory. Also, with the treaty agreement, France actually gave up part of its territory to Spain as well. So now Spain has even more area at this time. Now, the war's over, French and Indian War's over. Great Britain just acquired more territory in North America, so their colony is bigger. However, war is expensive. And so the King of England at the time, King George III, said, well, those colonies, they owe us for helping to maintain their freedom from France. And so King George came up with a way to make money by generating new taxes to just the colonists. And so he raised the taxes on the colonists. This made the colonies unhappy. Not only because of the taxes, but they said, well, we do not have a say in England's government. Are we not part of England? If we're part of England, we should have representation in England's government to help determine what taxes are put on our people. So if we're English citizens, we should have a say in England's government. So you had a group of the 13 colonies getting together at the Continental Congress. And it was finally determined at the Continental Congress that they were going to draft a declaration declaring their independence from Great Britain. So on July 4th of 1776, we had a document that was signed that said, Great Britain, we are no longer part of your country. We are our own country, the United States. And it was sent to King George III in England. King George III's response was not to say, okay, you're your own country. No, it escalated war with the colonies. So at this point, the colonies are at full-on war with Great Britain. Now, Great Britain had the most powerful army in the world at this time, and the colonies didn't really have a true army. So they called on this person, George Washington. And George Washington was chosen to come up with and lead the Continental or Colonial Army against Great Britain. Now, there's actually two other things that really helped out. The country of France offered then to help the colonies. And it would make sense why France would be okay with helping against Great Britain, since they just lost this territory to Great Britain. They would rather this area in North America be run independently than their rival Great Britain still having control of it. Same thing with Spain. Spain would actually help out with the colonies as well. And with those countries' help, we were able to defeat Great Britain and become our own independent colony, our own independent country. So in 1781, Revolutionary War finally ends. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, Great Britain recognized the colony's independence as its own country of the United States of America. So now we have this new country, and we've got to figure out exactly how we're going to rule and govern our new country of 13 states. So we drafted this Articles of Confederation. And that Articles of Confederation said, yeah, we can unite together, these 13 states, but each state is going to operate independently. And what really made it difficult was when it came to trade, that the states had difficult time trading goods back and forth with one another. So a few years after the Articles of Confederation was enacted, they said, hey, it's not working. So we need to come up with a new system of government that works better. So leaders from each of the states met again at the Constitutional Convention and drafted our United States Constitution. And that United States Constitution is the same Constitution that we use today, outlining our form of government. And what it did was it centralized more power to the federal government and not giving each state as much independence to run as they please. So, now that we have our U.S. Constitution, we have under the U.S. Constitution our first president, George Washington, and then from there on, our list of presidents. We now are looking at how our country grew, because we originally started as 13 states. Now we're up to 50 states. Well, the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, played a big role in making our country larger. In 1803, Thomas Jefferson had an opportunity to buy this Louisiana territory, which had been controlled again by France, from France. And when he made that purchase, it essentially doubled the size of the United States. Because the United States, after the Revolutionary War, controlled this area. Now we've doubled the size of our country with the Louisiana territory. And it was at this time that Thomas Jefferson sent two of my favorite historical figures, Lewis and Clark, to lead an expedition across the country to the Pacific Ocean. And you can see that this area down here at this time is still all Spanish territory. The country of Spain, and even Florida, the country of Spain still controls that area. So, how do we come to acquire these other areas? Well, this map shows when we get them. So Louisiana Purchase was that last one in 1803. One of the next areas we're looking at is Florida. We get Florida from Spain. We essentially said to Spain, hey, you're going to take this money for it, and we're going to then have Florida as one of our own. And through a treaty with Great Britain, we acquired this area so that we could have a nice even line of latitude marking our country borders. Texas, in 1836, Texas won its own independence from Mexico. In 1821, Mexico won its independence from Spain, so it's no longer Spanish territory, it's Mexican territory all through here. And it said in 1836, Texas won its independence from Mexico. But 9 years later, that's a good farming area in a lot of Texas. So we helped Texas become part of the United States. In 1848, President James K. Polk went to war with Mexico because when he became president, he said one of his missions was to expand the whole way across the North American continent and acquire this territory. So he declared war on Mexico and won this area to become part of the United States. We wanted a different border then, so we bought this part from Mexico in 1853. The Oregon country, both Great Britain, who controlled Canada at this time, and the United States were trying to claim this area, and so they came up with that line of latitude boundary that the United States would have this part, Great Britain would have that part. And then Alaska and Hawaii. Alaska we bought off of Russia in 1867. Hawaii we acquired in 1898 through the Spanish-American War. So that's how our country has grown. From 13 states at the original start of our country to the 50 states that we have today. All right, now check out the rest of Google Classroom. Make sure you've completed everything in today's assignment. We'll see you next time.